You thought their jealousy was a curse, but you were wrong. It was prophecy. You feel it, don't you? That weight pressing down on your chest, the silent war waged against you in whispers and side glances, the way they smirked when you stumbled, the satisfaction in their eyes when you fell. You were convinced it was a sign to stop, a message from the universe that you weren't meant to rise. You took their doubt, their ridicule, their envy, and carried it like a chain around your neck, believing every insult, every dismissal, every cold shoulder was proof that you were unworthy. But you never stopped to ask yourself, why? Why were they watching so closely? Why did they care so much? Why did your existence, your dreams, your ambition threaten them to the point of resentment? Their jealousy wasn't a curse, it was confirmation. Confirmation that you were built differently, that you carried something inside you that they couldn't understand, couldn't match, couldn't control. Their words weren't warnings, they were confessions. Every insult disguised as a joke, every backhanded compliment, every time they told you to be realistic, was never about you. It was about them, their fear, their insecurity, their own limitations projected onto you. They needed you to doubt yourself because the moment you realized who you really were, their illusion of power would shatter. And they couldn't let that happen. You see, the world has a way of trying to tame the untamed. It has rules, structures, invisible walls designed to keep people like you in place. People with vision, people with fire in their veins and defiance in their bones. People who refuse to shrink just to make others comfortable. And when those walls start to crack, when someone like you dares to step beyond what's expected, what's allowed, what's normal, the world fights back. It fights with doubt, with mockery, with resistance, disguised as advice. You're too much, you're too ambitious. You should be grateful for what you have. No, you should be furious at the lies they've fed you, at the audacity of small minds who tried to shrink yours, at the sheer absurdity of a world that told you to dull your shine because it made others squint. But here's the truth. If they weren't threatened, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't waste their breath trying to convince you that you're nothing if deep down they didn't see something. If they didn't feel your presence shaking the ground beneath their feet, they wouldn't be scrambling to steady themselves. They hate you for the very thing they wish they had. The courage to be more, to demand more, to break every mold they themselves were too afraid to crack. And so, they choose the easy path. It's easier to resent than to rise, easier to tear down than to build up. Their jealousy isn't about you, it's about the war they lost with themselves. So why did you believe them? Why did you let their fears become your reality? Why did you allow people who gave up on their own greatness to dictate the limits of yours? You spend so much time questioning yourself, doubting your worth, waiting for someone to give you permission to step into your power. But let me ask you this, when did kings and queens ever ask for permission? When did empire builders wait for approval? When did the greats of this world shrink themselves so the average could feel comfortable? Never, and neither will you. You have spent long enough in the shadows, swallowing your voice, playing it safe, convincing yourself that maybe they were right. Maybe you were dreaming too big. Maybe you were asking for too much. But tell me, where did that get you? Did shrinking make them love you? Did playing small earn their respect? Did keeping your head down stop them from talking? No, because they were never going to accept you. Not as long as you refused to settle. Not as long as you dared to want more. Not as long as you carried the fire of something greater inside you. So stop waiting. Stop apologizing. Stop carrying their burdens as if they were yours to bear. You weren't meant to be liked by everyone. You weren't meant to blend in, to go unnoticed, to live a life that pleases the crowd but suffocates your soul. You were meant to be seen, to be heard, to shake the foundations of every room you walk into. And if that makes them uncomfortable, good. Their jealousy is not your problem. It is your proof. Proof that you are on the right path. Proof that you are touching the edge of something extraordinary. Proof that you were never ordinary to begin with, so wear it like a crown. Walk with the knowledge that every whispered insult, every envious glance, every attempt to hold you down is nothing more than fuel for your fire. They tried to break you, not realizing they were sharpening you. They tried to bury you, not realizing they were planting you. They thought their jealousy would be your downfall, but it was always your rise. They smiled to your face and sharpened their knives behind your back. You saw it, didn't you? The way their eyes flickered with something unspoken when you shared your dreams. The way their laughter lingered just a little too long when you stumbled. The way their congratulations felt hollow like an echo in an empty room. They were never proud of you. They were studying you, measuring the distance between your potential and their insecurities, calculating just how much further you could go before their envy turned to sabotage. Jealousy is never loud at first. It starts as a whisper, a barely noticeable shift in the air, a look that lingers too long. A comment meant to sound like concern, but laced with venom. Are you sure that's a good idea? I mean, I support you, but don't get ahead of yourself. It drips slowly, seeping into your thoughts until it no longer needs a voice, because now it lives inside you. Now you hear it before they even speak. Now you question yourself before you even begin. And that's exactly what they wanted. Who were they? The faces you trusted, the voices you once sought for validation, friends who cheered for you when you were at their level but grew silent the moment you took a step ahead, family members who told you to be realistic, not because they wanted to protect you, but because they feared watching you surpass them. The world that feeds on conformity, that rewards those who follow and punishes those who dare to lead. You thought they would celebrate your growth, but growth is threatening to those who have chosen to remain small. Your ambition became a mirror they couldn't look into without seeing everything they refused to become. And so, they turned against you. Not with outright war, no, that would be too obvious. Instead, they used something sharper than swords. Doubt, the little remarks that made you second-guess your abilities, the passive-aggressive advice that made you hesitate before chasing what was yours, the lack of support disguised as neutrality. I just don't want to see you get hurt. Maybe you should wait a little longer. Not everyone is meant to make it. You thought they were being cautious. You thought they cared. But what they really meant was, don't go where I was, too afraid to go. Don't become what I failed to become. And you listened. You let their fears become your own. You made yourself smaller to fit into spaces never meant to contain you. You dimmed your light because you thought it was too blinding for them to handle. You hesitated when you should have leaped. You questioned when you should have declared. You waited for approval that was never coming. And still, no matter how much you shrank, no matter how much you bent yourself to fit their mold, it was never enough. Because their problem was never what you did, it was who you were. You could have failed, and they still would have envied the way you tried. You could have given up, and they still would have resented the way you dared to dream in the first place. Their jealousy was never about what you had, it was about what you had the audacity to reach for. Because deep down, they knew the truth. You were always meant to be more. And that truth haunted them. So they did what people do when they feel powerless. They tried to control you. They built walls, not with their hands, but with their words. People like us don't make it. You don't have the right connections. You're not special. Lies disguised as wisdom, chains disguised as protection. And slowly, without realizing it, you stopped fighting. You convinced yourself that maybe they were right. Maybe you were asking for too much. Maybe the road ahead was too uncertain, too dangerous. Maybe staying in your place was the safest choice. That's how jealousy works. It doesn't need to destroy you directly. It just needs to make you destroy yourself. And for a while, you did. You let their words become your thoughts, their limits become your prison. You let their resentment shape the way you saw yourself. You started doubting your own instincts, questioning your own worth, fearing your own potential. The villain wasn't just them anymore. The villain had become the voice in your own mind, the one that echoed every doubt they planted, the one that whispered, "What if they're right?" every time you tried to rise. But they weren't right. They were afraid. And that fear wasn't yours to carry. So tell me, how much longer will you let them dictate your story? How much longer will you let people who never had the courage to chase greatness decide if you deserve it? How much longer will you keep your fire contained just to protect those who never intended to rise with you? Because here's the truth. Their jealousy is proof of your power. Their doubt is proof of your potential. Their resentment is proof that you are touching something they could never grasp. And the only thing standing between you and the empire you were meant to rule is the belief that you need their permission to build it. You don't. So let them watch, let them whisper, let them doubt, but don't you dare let them win. Because their jealousy is not a wall, it is a stepping stone. And every brick they throw at you is another one you will use to build your throne. Every step you took, they told you it was a mistake. Every dream you chased, they laughed in your face. At first you fought against it. You told yourself their words didn't matter, that their doubt couldn't touch you. You stood tall, shoulders squared, ready to prove them wrong. But the weight of it all, the constant mockery, the quiet dismissal, the smirks, the condescending nods, the way they looked at you like you were delusional. Slowly it began to seep in. It became harder to shake off, harder to ignore, harder to believe that you could rise when every voice around you insisted that you were destined to fall. At some point you stopped resisting. Maybe it wasn't a single moment. Maybe it was gradual, like a slow drowning, the water rising inch by inch until one day you realized you couldn't breathe. You started to hesitate before speaking your dreams aloud, fearing the eye rolls, the forced smiles, the pity disguised as encouragement. You started second-guessing yourself, hearing their voices in your head before you could even take a step forward. Are you sure? That's not realistic. People like you don't make it. Until their words weren't just words anymore. They became truths you swallowed whole. And so, you sank. You stopped dreaming as boldly as before. You started playing it safe, choosing the path of least resistance, the one that wouldn't invite their scorn. You began editing yourself, making yourself smaller, easier to digest. You told yourself it was just temporary, that you were being smart, that you were waiting for the right time. But deep down, you knew the truth. You were afraid. Not just afraid of failing and proving them right. Afraid that maybe they saw something you didn't, that maybe you really weren't enough. And that fear, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The less you tried, the more it felt like they were right. The more you hesitated, the further your dreams slipped from your grasp. The fire inside you didn't go out. It dimmed, waiting, hoping for a reason to reignite. But the longer you stayed in the dark, the more it felt like maybe this was where you were always meant to be. You watched as others moved forward, took risks, claimed victories that once felt like they should have been yours. And with every success that wasn't yours, the doubt grew louder. That could have been me. Why couldn't I have done that? Maybe I was never meant to. The weight of it all became unbearable, the jealousy, the doubt, the feeling of being unseen, unheard, insignificant. You wanted to scream, but what was the point? No one was listening. No one ever had. This was the lowest point, the place where most people stop, the place where dreams die in silence, the place where the voices of the world become the voices in your own head, and suddenly, the greatest enemy isn't them, it's you. So now, the question is this: what will you do? Will you stay here? Let the weight of their jealousy, their doubt, their dismissal suffocate you completely? Will you let the world write your story for you, reduce you to a footnote in someone else's tale? Or will you fight back? This is the breaking moment, the moment where you either surrender to the darkness or claw your way out of it, the moment that will define the rest of your life. So tell me, what will you choose? You have spent so long drowning in their words, suffocating under the weight of their doubts, that you forgot something essential. Pressure doesn't just crush, it creates. Fire doesn't just burn, it refines. And resistance? It doesn't just hinder, it strengthens. Every empire that ever stood was built in defiance of those who swore it would never exist. Every legend that ever walked this earth was once just a person who refused to be told who they could or could not be. Every great force that changed history was, at some point, ridiculed, doubted, dismissed, and now you stand at the edge of that realization. What if their jealousy was never meant to stop you? What if it was the proof you needed all along? The world doesn't resist the ordinary, doesn't try to break what it doesn't fear. No one fights against mediocrity, they fight against power. They fight against potential. They fight against those who dare to defy expectations and reshape the world in their image. That means you were never weak, never incapable, never undeserving. You were just unshaped. Gold is only gold because it survives the fire. And so will you. The flames they meant to destroy you were actually forging you, stripping away everything that didn't belong, refining you into something unbreakable. All this time you thought you were suffering under their hatred, their envy, their doubt. But what if you were just being prepared? What if every betrayal, every rejection, every moment of feeling unseen was actually pushing you toward something greater? Because the truth is, you needed the resistance. You needed the rejection. You needed to be tested. The world does not hand over power freely. It makes you fight for it. It makes sure you are worthy of it. It does not allow the weak to lead, the hesitant to reign, the fearful to command. And for too long, you have let the fire of their jealousy burn through you like destruction. But now, the shift begins. You start to see it for what it is: a force, an energy, a weapon. The whisper of self-belief that had been buried beneath their voices begins to rise again, not as a question, but as a declaration. They didn't try to break you because you were nothing. They tried to break you because you were something. Something they feared, something they envied, something they couldn't control. And that whisper of belief, it is getting louder. This is the moment everything changes. The moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim of their jealousy and start using it as fuel. The moment you take the fire that was meant to consume you and turn it into a weapon of creation. Because now you remember, fire does not only destroy, it forges. And you are not ashes, you are gold. What if every attack was actually a gift in disguise? For so long, you saw their jealousy as a burden, an obstacle, something that weighed you down and made the road harder. You mistook their resistance as a sign that you were on the wrong path. You believed their words had power over you, that their doubts were something you had to fight against. But what if the real battle was never with them? What if the enemy was never their jealousy? What if the enemy was how you perceived it? You thought their jealousy meant you were weak, that you were an imposter, walking into a world where you didn't belong, that every laugh behind your back, every cold glance, every whisper was proof that you weren't enough. But that was never the truth, because envy does not chase mediocrity. No one wastes their energy envying someone who isn't a threat. No one tries to dim a light that isn't shining. No one fights against a force that doesn't matter. The only reason they tried to hold you back was because they saw something in you, something undeniable. something unstoppable, something they could never possess themselves. Their jealousy wasn't a reflection of your weakness, it was confirmation of your strength. And now, for the first time, you start to see it. Every insult, every rejection, every roadblock, it wasn't a curse, it was a compass. It was pointing you in the exact direction you were meant to go. They didn't want you to rise because they knew that once you did, there would be no stopping you. And the greatest trick they ever played was convincing you that their fear was your own. But it was never your fear to carry. This is the moment where everything shifts. The moment you stop running from their jealousy and start embracing it. The moment you stop seeing resistance as a warning and start seeing it as a sign that you are exactly where you need to be. Because those who change the world are never welcomed with open arms. They are challenged, they are doubted, they are tested. And you have spent too much time believing that their resistance meant you were unworthy. But in reality, it was the only proof you ever needed. They only tried to stop you because they knew you were powerful. And now, so do you. This is the first step toward power. The moment where the victim becomes the warrior. Where hesitation is replaced with certainty. Where every moment of self-doubt dissolves into nothing. Because now, you know the truth. They were never the enemy. The only battle was within you. And now, you've already won. The world has never embraced greatness without a fight. Every powerful figure you have ever admired, every legend whose name still echoes through time, was once a target of doubt, ridicule, and resistance. Before they became immortal in the minds of millions, they were mocked. Before they were revered, they were dismissed. Before they ruled, they were told they were unworthy. History is written in the blood of those who refused to bow to the opinions of others. The warriors, the visionaries, the kings and queens, the revolutionaries. The world did not hand them their crowns. The world tried to break them first. Think of the warriors who were told they were too weak only to rise and conquer. The leaders who were told they were fools only to shape the future. The inventors and thinkers who were cast aside as madmen only for the world to later bow at their feet. They all have one thing in common. Before they were celebrated, they were envied. Before they were followed, they were fought. Before they were seen as unstoppable, they had to endure a world that tried to stop them. And now you start to understand. You are not alone in this struggle. You are not the first to be doubted, to be mocked, to be underestimated. You are walking the same path that every legend before you has walked. They wouldn't envy you if you weren't worth envying. They wouldn't resist you if you weren't a force worth resisting. Their jealousy is not a burden, it is proof. Proof that you are on the brink of something they fear. Proof that you are stepping into a power they cannot control. This realization changes everything. You no longer see your struggle as punishment. You no longer see their jealousy as an attack. You start to see it for what it truly is, a sign that you are becoming something greater than they ever imagined. A sign that you are stepping into the league of those who refuse to be forgotten. And now, the fire inside you burns brighter than ever, because you know that the greatest ones in history didn't succeed because they were accepted. They succeeded because they were willing to be doubted, willing to be envied, willing to stand against the weight of the world and push forward anyway. And so will you. Everything changes the moment you stop seeing their jealousy as a curse and start using it as fuel. For so long, you absorbed their words like poison, letting every doubt seep into your veins, allowing every rejection to chip away at your confidence. But now the shift begins. Now, you stop treating their resistance as a force meant to break you and start wielding it like a weapon. Every whisper behind your back, every cold stare, every attempt to hold you down, they are no longer wounds, they are bricks, and you are building something unstoppable. They tried to burn your foundation, but instead they built your throne. The fire they sent to consume you, you are now standing inside it, unshaken, unscorched, rising from the ashes as something stronger than they ever imagined. Every insult, every attempt to silence you, every door they slammed in your face, you take it all, piece by piece, and lay the groundwork for something greater. You start moving differently, speaking differently, carrying yourself like the ruler of the empire they never wanted you to build. Because the truth is, you were never just another face in the crowd. You were never meant to blend in, to be overlooked, to be another story left unfinished. You were always meant to rise. And now, you no longer hesitate. You no longer wait for permission. You step into your power with the certainty of someone who knows that the throne was always meant to be theirs. And the world starts to notice. The same people who doubted you, the same voices that once told you to give up, to stay in your place, to settle, they watch now with wide eyes. Because you are no longer playing small. You are no longer digestible. You are no longer willing to carry the weight of their insecurities just to make them comfortable. You are rising, and there is nothing they can do to stop it. The first victory changes everything. For the first time, you step beyond the boundaries they tried to set for you. You take a risk. You push forward. You refuse to shrink. And the result? You rise. Maybe it's not the final triumph, not yet, but it's enough. Enough to prove to yourself that you were never powerless. Enough to remind you that every step forward is a step away from the version of you that used to doubt. Enough to taste what it feels like to break free from their expectations. And it is intoxicating, but they don't like it. The moment you prove them wrong, the jealousy that once lurked beneath fake smiles and passive-aggressive words begins to surface in full force. They whisper louder now. They search for cracks in your confidence. They wait for a misstep, a moment of weakness, anything to pull you back down. But this time, it doesn't work. Because you're no longer afraid of their words. You wear them like armor. Every insult, every sarcastic remark, every attempt to belittle what you've built, it rolls off you like rain on stone. You don't flinch. You don't explain yourself. You don't apologize for the space you take up. And that, more than anything, infuriates them. Because their power over you was never real. It was borrowed. Given freely every time you let their opinions dictate your actions. But now you've taken it back. This is the beginning of something unstoppable. The energy around you is shifting. The momentum is building. The first victory is just a spark, but you can already see the fire it will ignite. You are no longer asking if you belong. You are no longer questioning if you deserve this path. You are walking it with the certainty of someone who knows that the throne was always meant to be theirs, and soon the world will know it too. Something has changed. You can feel it in the way you move, in the way you speak, in the way the world now reacts to your presence. The weight of hesitation is gone. The doubt that once lingered in the back of your mind has been silenced. You no longer shrink yourself to fit into spaces too small for your greatness. You no longer seek validation from those who could never understand your vision. The transformation is complete, not just in your mind, but in every fiber of your being. You are not who you were. You are the storm now. There is a power in you that was always there, but now it is undeniable. Before, you carried potential like a secret, unsure if you were allowed to unleash it. But now you make no apologies. You do not ask for permission. You have stepped fully into your own authority, and the world has no choice but to take notice. Your posture is different. There's no more uncertainty in the way you walk. Your voice is sharper. There's no hesitation when you speak. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth anymore, because your presence alone makes it clear. The transformation is not just external. It is mental, emotional, and spiritual. Every hardship, every betrayal, every moment of doubt, they didn't break you, they built you. They burned away everything that wasn't meant to last, leaving behind something unshakable. And the ones who once looked down on you, the ones who whispered in the shadows, they are watching now, speechless, unable to recognize the person they once dismissed. Because you are no longer a question mark. You are the answer, and for the first time, you see yourself exactly as you are always meant to be. Powerful, limitless, unstoppable. The battle has always been building toward this moment. Every doubt, every insult, every whispered word meant to keep you small, it all comes crashing into you at once. But this time, you don't run, you don't shrink, you don't flinch. This time, you stand in the storm and face it head on. The confrontation is inevitable. It may not be physical, but it is real. Whether it's the people who doubted you, the circumstances that tried to break you, or the voice inside your own mind that once held you captive. This is the moment where it all comes to a head. Every shadow from your past rises in one final attempt to pull you back. The weight of your old self lingers, whispering, tempting, begging you to return to the comfort of obscurity. But you are not that person anymore. The tension is thick, the moment charged with the energy of everything that has ever tried to stop you. And the audience holds their breath. Will you rise or will you break? Will you prove them right or will you burn their expectations to the ground? This is the test, the final reckoning. The moment where you either claim your power or let it slip through your fingers. The ones who once dismissed you are watching, waiting for a sign that they were right all along. The version of you that doubted, hesitated, questioned, it's clawing at your mind, trying to drag you back into the darkness. But then, something shifts. The weight is still there, but it no longer controls you. The doubt still lingers, but it no longer defines you. The voices still whisper, but they no longer hold any power, because you see it now. The fear in their eyes, the desperation in their words, the panic that comes when someone they underestimated refuses to kneel. And in that moment, the battle is over, because you don't need to fight for their approval. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. The war was never against them. It was against yourself. And now, for the first time, you realize you've already won. The moment has arrived. The journey through doubt, rejection, and resistance has led to this, the claiming of the throne, the undeniable step into power. Everything that was meant to break you has only strengthened your foundation. Every insult, every moment of being overlooked, Every jealous attempt to tear you down, it all built the empire you now stand upon. And as you rise, they watch. The ones who doubted you, the ones who whispered behind your back, the ones who smirked when you struggled, they are silent now. Because the person they once mocked, the person they tried to contain, has become something they can no longer ignore. They are no longer above you, they are below, watching, realizing too late that they were never your judges. They were only your stepping stones. You stand in the place they swore you'd never reach, not because you proved them wrong, but because you finally realized they were never right to begin with. Their jealousy didn't destroy you, it built you. It forced you to sharpen yourself, to stand firm, to keep moving even when the world wanted you to stop. And now, you no longer just believe in your power, you own it. This is the moment of ultimate transformation. There is no going back. The weight of doubt is gone. The need for validation has disappeared. You don't ask for permission anymore. You take what was always meant to be yours. Because you were never just another contender. You were always the ruler. And now, the crown is finally yours. This is not a suggestion. This is not a plea. This is a command. Own your power, fully, unapologetically, without hesitation, without waiting for approval, without seeking validation from those who were never meant to understand you. You don't need permission to be great. You never did. For too long, you let the world tell you who you were supposed to be. You let their fears become your fears, their doubts become your limits. You walked through life waiting for someone to grant you access, to give you the green light to step into your own destiny, but no more. Now you take what is yours. Now you walk with the authority of someone who knows exactly who they are and what they were meant to do. No more shrinking, no more explaining yourself, no more making yourself digestible for people who will never have the courage to taste greatness themselves. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to blend in. You were always meant to break the mold, to stand out, to carve a path that only you could walk. And if they don't like it, let them watch. If they don't understand it, let them stay confused. You were not made to be understood by those who have settled for less, because they tried to stop you. They tried to hold you back. They tried to silence you, to bury you beneath their jealousy, their envy, their doubt. But they didn't know. They didn't know that you were never meant to stay down. They didn't know that every attempt to bury you was only planting you deeper into the ground, where your roots would grow strong, unshakable, unstoppable. They didn't know that you were the seed, and now you have risen. Now you stand tall, no longer asking if you deserve to be here, knowing that you were always meant to rule. So take your place, walk boldly, speak with power, move with certainty. You don't need their permission. You never did, and now they know it too.